Despite how well this one is disguised, it is still just a villain reform episode. We're talking about Catwalk right now. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you once again. And if you're new here, thank you for joining us. If you're like me and grew up on Batman the Animated Series or 80s and 90s cartoons in general, then this is the place for you. I hope that you'll stick around, hit subscribe, because I have a lot of great content about all the cartoons that we grew up on and shaped our childhood right here. Like today's episode, Catwalk, which originally aired on September 13th, 1995. This episode has a pretty clever masquerade with Scarface and Catwoman and all these wonderful elements to it. But when you really strip it away, it's just another reform episode. But I think they do some things really well in this, and we'll talk all about that right after our 60-second Joker Bomb rundown of the episode. Here we go. Selina Kyle is out visiting a museum of all these extinct animals and thinks back to the glory days when she was once Catwoman, because she has now given that up and she also is extinct. She runs into Bruce Wayne at this benefit, and Bruce Wayne is with Veronica Vreeling, and they had exchanged some words, and Selina Kyle accuses her of having a grandpa that killed all these animals, and she leaves in a huff, and then Scarface catches up with her and says, hey, I got a deal for you. Why don't you go help me steal this, and we'll split it 50-50, and you won't have to worry about going back to the jail. So she thinks about it, and she does, and she goes in to steal this, and Scarface ends up double-crossing her, and she gets out and escapes, and Batman goes, what are you doing? I thought you turned over a new leaf. She goes, well, I got into some trouble, but I want to do right by this, and then she double-crosses him, and she goes back to Scarface to find out that he has just been stealing these stuffed animals to resell to people like Penguin, and so there's a fight ensues, and then she ends up getting away. Wow, I am on a roll. This isn't good for the fourth season, but I'm cooking 2 in a row.
This is Scarface you're dealing with, and I don't stand for no disrespect.
This episode's kind of hit and miss for me. I think that there's some really fun elements to this episode. And for some reason, the way that they set this episode up with Selina Kyle reminiscing about the glory days and the good times that she had being a cat burglar and the cat and mouse game with her and Batman was really pretty interesting. And I got drawn into this and really felt for her, because she is one of those characters that kind of goes back and forth and rides the line of wanting to do good, but is drawn to this life of crime and likes the excitement of it and the thrill of the chase. And they kind of expound on a lot of that in that very opening sequence. And it wasn't until she was talking with Scarface later in the car that I went, wait a minute, this is a reform episode. I got caught completely off guard by that. And I was so down on all the other reform episodes in that we've seen so far that this one, I thought that they set it up really well. And it felt very deliberate in the way that they were exploring this.
Pass. Kitty's been staying in at night. It's not the greatest, but it beats the pound, if you know what I mean.
And also, I think it caught me off guard because here we are kind of skipped ahead in time a little bit. Although we haven't seen Catwoman a lot recently. So perhaps they're in that time that she's kind of been off the radar. She served her time and is now out and wants to do good. And here's a case where she's reforming, but not making a big announcement or big ruse about reforming, but truly is trying to do the right thing. And I think that's what makes Catwoman such a fascinating character.
Giving up Catwoman hasn't been easy, Bruce. I miss the excitement, the danger. Sometimes I feel so tempted.
I also really like the line that Veronica Vreeling has at the party.
Once I'd like to throw a party without some kook showing up.
Which is really her role in the show as a catalyst to have this party or some event or to run into some sort of villain that sets this plan in motion. And she kind of just gets caught in the crossfires of all this. And it's convenient that she's with Bruce Wayne, because then Batman obviously will know what's going on in the villain world.
In 2 seconds, that'll be more than I can say about you.
Calm down, pussycat. We're all friends here.
I love that Scarface is in this episode. This could have been any number of villains that they could have used in this episode to talk Selina Kyle into getting back into the criminal world. But the fact that they chose Scarface, I think, is kind of fun, because he's an interesting character. He hasn't been overused. And this seems like something that he would do. And especially the double-crossing element towards Selina Kyle makes perfect sense.
But plans can change, can't they, Rhino?
Right, boss.
Although I don't think he had a very convincing argument to talk her into going back to a life of crime or taking this risk.
That's a darn shame. And I thought for sure you'd want a chance to get even with the Vreelands. Not just for yourself, you understand, but for all those poor little stuffed critters what never had the chance to fight back.
Oh, barf.
Other than, I guess she didn't need much pushing to be convinced. I think she was all but convinced for herself. Kind of goes along with his scheme.
You know what, Isis? Extinctions for wimps.
And as we're talking about interesting characters in the show, I think this would be a good time to mention that this episode doesn't have Robin. Somehow this one slipped by. And again, unless this was produced earlier in production before the mandate from Warner Brothers that Robin needs to be included in there. But they didn't need to figure out a way to maim him to keep him out of the episode. He just wasn't there.
After all, we do make a good team.
When we're on the same side.
What's also great about having Scarface in this episode is it really gives an opportunity to illustrate some of the great reasons why I love Scarface. The way that he interacts with Ventriloquist, which obviously is all him, is so much fun. And they have this great dynamic.
Hold my hat, will you? Bam! Ow!
I dropped my phone. And also, I don't know if this was done deliberate or this was just a mistake or what the situation was, but how does Scarface talk on the phone?
Hey, you don't want it? Fine.
Wouldn't the ventriloquist need to hear what was being said on the other line of the phone?
I got a client dying to get her paws on it.
Another great reason to use Scarface in this episode is obviously there was a lot of censorship issues that came across with what they could and could not do on a kid's cartoon. But the fact that Scarface is a wooden dummy allowed them to pretty much destroy him at the end of every episode that he was in. So there's a lot of great little elements in this episode, little one-off bits, great lines, little sequences that all play really well. And the idea of Selina Kyle trying to go good and kind of flipping back and forth on what she should and shouldn't do, and the fact that she gets double-crossed and then immediately turns over and double-crosses Batman are all great elements in this episode. But then it kind of unravels for me at the end where Batman very well could have captured her, or they could have done the thing where Batman lets her go or turns away and gives her another chance because he sees the good in her. But the way that she escapes is Catwoman takes this stuffed tiger and throws it into the fire and then tells Batman,
It's priceless, Batman. The last of its kind. Will you take me in or let it become extinct again?
mind you, an already dead tiger that's just stuffed and taxidermied, to save that or to capture her. Now, this trick has been used on Batman numerous times where Batman has to choose of saving somebody's life or capturing the villain. And Batman always goes for saving the person's life or finds some clever way of accomplishing them both. But this is a secret that shouldn't get out to too many villains, is that Batman never goes after the villain if it means sacrificing somebody else's life or saving somebody else.
The lady or the tiger, darling?
But in this situation, Batman's choosing between saving this museum artifact, an already dead tiger, or capturing Catwoman, and goes after the tiger, and then she gets away. Which is hard to get behind, but the bigger issue I have with that is I don't feel like Catwoman would do that. She's the one at the beginning that was so heartbroken over all these animals that were extinct and now just stuffed in a museum that I couldn't see her even doing that unless she just knows Batman so well that she knows he's going to go after that. But that ending is just really where it kind of fell apart for me.
I am the cat who walks by herself.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, despite the issues I have with the very ending of the episode, there's a lot of great moments in the episode, but they're all these kind of little vignettes, and although there is a story that strings them together, like I said, it's really ultimately just a reform episode. So taking all those things into consideration, this episode falls at the number 41 spot of my favorite episodes so far. Just below On Leather Wings, which we haven't talked about in quite a while. I think that On Leather Wings, even though it's been pushed pretty far down the list at this point, the animation in that is probably some of the best that we've seen in the series. And honestly, the animation in this episode is starting to feel a little lazy. But I do have it beating out Blind as a Bat, because I always tend to favor the episodes that delve deeper into a character element or the psyche of a character, like they do with Catwoman in this one. Whereas that episode, like we had talked about, was Batman was blinded, but became completely unable to do his job, even though he has these other senses. So that's why it beats out that episode.
Oh, no!
Oh, yes.
So I mentioned some of the reasons why I love Scarface is because of his great little one-liners and his interaction with Ventriloquist. If you're also a fan of Scarface, what's some of your favorite one-liners or interactions with the Ventriloquist, either from the show or from the comic books? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click that thumbs up button. It always helps me out tremendously. And if you want to see more content like this, just hit subscribe, because I have new episodes coming out every Tuesday and Thursday, at least for next week, because we're wrapping up Batman the Animated Series. Only 2 more episodes left. But on Tuesday, we have the episode Bullet for Bullock. So you don't want to miss that. As always, I'm Andy Knode. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.